I think the more you play D&D, the more you realize that the way the game is played varies from person to person. Something about the way we approach the game is different. But what? Hello everyone, today I wanted to tackle this complex task of trying to understand each other as players and attempt to explain these differences in a way that's easy to grasp. Basically, I want to give you a framework that'll help you understand both yourself as a player and through conversation gain a better understanding of your fellow players. It doesn't matter if you're a DM or a player, this will help you have more fun playing D&D. So it is my current theory that there are 3 flavors of D&D players. 3 distinct archetypes, classes you might call them, that explain how a group of individual people, all somehow drawn to the same game, approach it differently. The 3 archetypes are actors, storytellers, and writers. Let's start with a general overview of each. Actors are the kinds of players who live in the moment of the game. They love being their characters during the game, engaging in roleplay, both small and dramatic, trying out different voices and body language, but there's a fundamental quality of spontaneity to it all. They are not the types of players who spend much time preparing for the game by, for example, writing a ton of backstory. Just enough to get them to play the character and then they figure the rest out as they go. They tend to be very improvisational in that way. They don't spend much time thinking of their character's future either. Instead, they'll leave it up to whatever happens in the game and what their character does in response to that. This usually means that actors tend to be very open to wherever the story takes them. The one thing you can rely on with actors is that they will take almost any opportunity to play their character. They will 100% interact with the player characters and other NPCs, and they will always do it as their character. What I mean by that is that if, for example, an actor plays a character who's a snob, they will play into that trait. If the character is goofy, they'll act goofy. If the character is a caretaker, they'll act like that too, as that's part of the fun for actors. Next, storytellers. Storytellers are the kinds of players who care about the narrative of the game and wanting it to be the best it can be. They love being a part of an interesting story and playing into it as much as possible. Storytellers know a plot hook when they see it, and they are more than happy to play into it to kick off the story. Because they are usually skilled storytellers themselves, it's almost like a sense to them. They can see potential narrative moments before they happen and thus are able to influence and set them up. They share this fundamental quality of adaptability. Storytellers are the most willing to shift and adapt their character's behavior to fit the story the group wants to tell, which is something that the other archetypes are less likely to do. They'll usually approach character creation the same way, by looking at what the other players want to play and then building a character that can fill in potential gaps. This could be a particular role in the party that's missing, like a tank, healer, or spellcaster, or a character personality that's missing. My brother is actually a great example of this. He once played in a game I was running where during character creation the 3 other players decided that they all wanted to play young, sort of inexperienced and sheltered characters. My brother, being a storyteller, chose to make a character that would fill in the gap. So he decided to play an older, rugged bugbear captain that was kind of crazy but had a good heart. And that brought in some interesting contrast to the other characters. Suddenly the other players who were all playing these inexperienced and sheltered characters had someone to play off of, which made the roleplay and the story much better as a result. Finally, writers. Writers are the kinds of players who love getting to know their characters deeply. They enjoy spending lots of time writing very detailed and personalized backstories for their characters. And for them, it's an important part of getting into and playing that character. For writers, the game happens as much in between sessions as during sessions, because writers share a fundamental quality of preparation. They spend lots of time preparing a character for a game. This isn't just the case for backstory, but for their character sheets too. They like to tweak and optimize and find all the options that fit perfectly with how they imagine their character being. That also means that they are the most likely archetype to want to homebrew their own subclasses, backgrounds, feats, etc. Writers are more prone to asking the DM lots of questions about the world too, because they want to create something that fits and they want to be on the same page that their character is. Because writers spend so much time writing their characters' backstory and personality, they'll usually adhere to what they have written like a code that they follow. It's something that they like to refer back to when making decisions as their character. They ask themselves, what would my character do, where an actor might just decide on a whim to do something. Now, it's important for me to mention that none of these archetypes are better or worse. There's no value judgment here, they are just different approaches with their own pros and cons. Actors are very open and spontaneous, and they generally figure details out as they go, which can make it difficult for DMs especially to properly prepare the game for these kinds of players. Storytellers are very adaptable and narrative first, and they like to build their characters around that, but they tend to struggle more if the group hasn't had a session 0 where a clear idea of the kind of story and tone was established. Writers want to dig deep into their characters, and there are a couple of things they need in order to do that. First of all, they need time to prepare, and second of all, they need some details about the world in order for them to ground their characters and write appropriate backstory. If writers haven't had those two things, they tend to enjoy the game less. And even though we have looked at these archetypes through the lens of a player, I believe that they almost certainly carry over to the other side of the DM screen. I think with DMs who are actors, you tend to get a lot of improvised things happening and a little bit less structured narrative, but one with a lot of player agency. With storytellers, you get a lot of rich, character-driven narratives, and with writers, you tend to get a game with a lot of upfront world building, with lots of lore and a more plot-driven story. Alright, I've explained the concept, but it's been a bit theoretical so far. I won't blame you if you're still scratching your head wondering where you fit into all of this. So let's take a look at some actual real examples of people by categorizing well-known players and DMs. That way, if you relate to their approach, you might share the same archetype. A great example of a player who is an actor is someone like Ashley Johnson from Critical Role. It's clear that she loves engaging in roleplay with the other players and really any NPC she meets, and she's very spontaneous about it. She also leans into her character's traits even in situations where they don't serve her character's goals, which is both admirable and leads to some very comedic moments.
I told you a story about someone picking my pocket 30 seconds ago, and then you pick someone's pocket? That was a priest.
So don't get on my ass about it. All I know is that it's pretty easy to do here. That's all I took from what you said.
If we were to jump to the other side of the screen, I think a great example of an actor DM would be someone like Deborah Ann Wool. She seems to have a very big focus on player agency and honoring her players' choices no matter how silly they may be, which obviously requires some improv skills. She seems to have a lot of fun and interesting characters in her game, and she has a very big emphasis on getting her players into the present moment. A great example of both a player and DM who's a storyteller is Matthew Mercer. As a player, he has said multiple times that he creates characters based on what's missing in the group or could add to it. I've also seen him deliberately taking chances to set up story moments with the rest of the players, which is a very storyteller thing to do. As a DM, he's just incredibly focused on creating these rich, character-driven storylines and really puts in effort to weave all the character stories together. He also puts guardrails up if a player wants to try something that could disrupt the narrative moment, because Matt is narrative first. A great example of a player who is a writer is someone like Liam O'Brien from Critical Role. From watching him, it's very apparent that he puts a lot of time and thought into his characters and that he knows them very intimately, both character-wise and abilities. He's also clearly a fan of powerful backstories. He tends to be noticeably less interested in more light, banter-like roleplay than he is when something involves his character's past or something they care about deeply. Jumping to the other side of the screen, a great example of a writer DM would be someone like Brennan Lee Mulligan. At least from the stuff he's done on Critical Role, there's just an insane amount of world building in his games that it's very apparent he enjoys that aspect and spends a lot of time on it. In classic writer fashion, he takes almost any opportunity to share some of that juicy lore. In Brennan's games, when the players want to do something, whether it succeeds or not is not determined by the story. It's determined by the logic of the world. As long as whatever they're trying is technically possible in the world, they can do it. So far, we've talked about these archetypes as individual categories, as if every player fits into one of these 3 buckets. But in reality, you might be a blend of multiple. I, for example, would describe myself as mostly an actor with a little bit of storyteller. But you might be a blend of writer and actor, or you could be a jack of all trades and have a bit of everything. Heck, there might even be more than 3 archetypes. Who knows? I'll gladly admit that there's absolutely no scientific validity to this, and therefore no right way to go about it. And that's fine. The point isn't to find the truth here. The point is actually to encourage reflection. Encourage you to think about how you approach the game and what you need to have fun, as well as to have conversations about this with your group. Learn about what they like, what their needs are, and try to accommodate each other the best you can. I promise you, if you do this, even if your group is a mix of all 3 archetypes, you can have a great time playing this game together. The reason I know this is because I have done it. That game I briefly mentioned earlier, where my brother played that bugbear, yeah, that game had 1 storyteller, 1 writer, and 2 actors. 3 if you include me, and we had a great time. It's possible. Now please let me know your thoughts about this in the comments down below. I'm really interested in hearing what the community thinks about this. With that said, I wish you all a wonderful day or night, and as always, may the dice roll in your favor. I'll see you around.